Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. This has been such a popular topic, and understandably, because I think it's something that we all do tend to struggle with. And any inspiration, ideas, and motivation we can get around it, I think, is most welcome. A few people know me, but for people who don't know me, I'll just give you a little bit of background on who I am. So I have a Bachelor of Science majoring in microbiology, and through this process, I really learnt to love cellular makeup and have the utmost respect for our bodies and really what makes them tick. I then followed this up with a graduate diploma in business, which led me into the corporate world for many years. And after having kids, I found my career wasn't as fulfilling, and I had this kind of real passion for health and well-being, which is when I started my training as a holistic health coach with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I have a thriving health coaching business that's been steadily growing for about 4 years now, and I also work with one of Western Australia's leading naturopaths, Remedy Wellness Medicine, here in Mosman Park. I've got 2 healthy and happy kids, well, most of the time, Chloe and Benji, who are almost 9 and 7, and a wonderfully supportive husband. So just as an example with my health coaching, I'd say probably about 95, if not 100% of my clients see improvements in immune systems. They also experience less doctor's visits. Long-term conditions can clear up, especially in relation to digestion, where things like irritable bowel and reflux and things like that are minimised. Skin conditions certainly improve. It's one of the first things clients tend to see. They sleep better, and importantly, their energy levels improve. And for mums, learning to lower their stress levels, which is really important and far more so in this day and age. So working with kids and families really is my passion. Kids are so rewarding as they can be so responsive to often the smallest changes in diet and lifestyle, which hopefully you'll see with even some of the suggestions I'm sharing today. There is a lot I will be sharing. So for those of you who might be kind of new and kind of to some of the suggestions, please don't be overwhelmed, but really just to take one idea, one that really resonates, that you know instinctively will help your family, introduce that, and just take it step by step. And then it's much more likely to stick and become a way of life. I'm just going to go through what I'm going to cover today. A bit of background on Kate Barnes Health Coaching and my e-course, Our Happy Children, and importantly, the one food our kids aren't eating enough of, and then 3 fundamental foods that are really necessary for optimum health, energy, and performance in our kids. And then I have got loads of recipes which I'll quickly run through to share with you, and some ideas. So really, my intention is to help minimize that kind of load in the morning, free it up, but at the same time adding some really great nutrition into our kids' days. And even if the lunchbox does come back full still, which it's bound to happen from time to time, I've got some great strategies on how to take the worry out of that, and to not be so concerned if that does happen. If you do have your phone on, or you've got Facebook up or other applications up on your computer, try and just shut them down so that we really have this time to focus and concentrate on the information that I'm sharing. All right, so I'll just talk a little bit about why I created Our Happy Children and why I'm so passionate about kids' health. So, there's many reasons, but 3 that are really closest to me and my family, and that's my own experience with my 8-year-old Chloe in the photo there with her brother Benj, which was taken down at their grandparents' place in Denmark. So Chloe really has been a driving force, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But secondly, the confusing messages we are constantly bombarded with as consumers in the marketplace. Really, there's so much confusion, and it really doesn't need to be that way. And thirdly, the horrifying statistics for the future of the health of our kids, or for us, and especially in our kids. It's 1 in 5 high school students are overweight or obese. 1 in 20 children suffer from a potentially fatal food allergy. 1 in 3 children will have digestive disorders, which is alarmingly high. Type 2 diabetes, cancer, it's all going on. And there are now illnesses that are being seen in our kids. and things that we didn't see in our childhood when we were kids, which I'm sure you can relate to. And I really sincerely believe it doesn't need to be this way. So just to talk a little bit about Chloe, because I think it really kind of reinforces, what's driving me, and the support that I can give with anybody who has children that they're concerned about, and really looking for answers. So Chloe was always a happy and a healthy kid, doing well at school. No obvious reasons for concern for her health. But at the age of 5, I noticed that her foot didn't seem to be developing. So one day as she was walking on the beach, as she ran, her foot was curving inwards unnaturally. And I didn't worry too much, but then we went to buy school shoes and her foot was almost a size smaller. This wasn't the case previously, and so over the next 8 to 12 months, we saw really every specialist imaginable. There's specialist paediatricians, podiatrists, orthopedic surgeons, chiropractors, and towards the end, even a neurologist who prescribed an MRI. And fortunately, this didn't come up with anything. And her advice was just to keep going with some physio, and really there was nothing else that we could do, and which was quite alarming at the time. It was a very difficult time. We were quite frustrated because we couldn't get answers, and really worried for Chloe and her future, and her self-esteem of having a deformed foot, particularly for a girl. So I kind of have been on a bit of a mission myself to really get to the cause. And really we're delighted that Chloe's foot is healing, and we're still on her path of healing. So this experience really has made me even more passionate about helping parents optimize their family's health and really support them in finding their own answers. So lunchboxes and what kids are eating every day is really an important part of this, and also one of our greatest challenges and frustrations as parents in keeping our kids healthy. So we've all done it. We've packed the healthiest lunchbox ever and it comes home full. It's so disheartening. And also, waste of good food and all the rest of it. So I'm going to specifically talk to you today about energy. There's many different signs that we can look for in terms of how kids are thriving, how they're sleeping, their digestion, their bowel movements, their skin. Chloe had quite bad goose flesh as well. So goose is called goosebump flesh. Her skin is just beautiful now. So we've totally cleared that up. But that's a sign that there's an imbalance in the body. Their mood, their immunity, and obviously their energy. So I'm going to talk about energy because it's a really obvious way to see how kids are going. Let's have a look at what is a healthy and tasty lunchbox. So it's great if we can have lots of colour. And I know for some people this is difficult because their kids can be fussy, and that's okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. And I'm sorry if I do rush through this a bit because there's just a lot I would like to cover in this short amount of time. But and also get to the questions and answers. So yeah, lots of colour. So where we get the phytonutrients, lots of the vegetables, and a bit of fruit, and then foods that have a low glycemic load, so in their whole and most natural form, and they are going to provide us a good energy. They're the foods that our body recognises and can assimilate so much better. So I don't use packet food in my kids' lunch boxes. I know that's not always possible. So if you do have to resort to packet food, just look for the less ingredients as possible. There's no numbers, no preservatives, and the ingredients are recognisable. If you're having sweets and treats in the lunchbox, try and use alternative sweeteners when you're making them at home. And the last one, the best to last, is incorporating the 3 macros. And the macros being the macronutrients. There tends to be a lot of emphasis on diets and types and different ways of eating. What works, what doesn't work, paleo, raw food, fast diets, that's part of the confusion. So my intention today is just to bring it back to basics and really simplify that. If we just focus on 3 main foods with each meal, then we're going to be nourishing our kids well. And that's really the main focus. So the 3 macronutrients: protein, carbohydrate, and fat. So we're all really familiar with these 3 different foods. They really help our bodies, like they are energy. This is where we get our energy from. So first of all, I'm going to zoom in on fundamental fats. Sadly, and with devastating consequences for our health, this nutrient has been poorly neglected. And over many years, it's been given such a bad rap that there is fear associated with it. And consequently, in some people and children, it's been left out of our diets completely. So just as a quick example, I have a client who at the age of 9 was told to go on a diet and by a doctor. So she's been dieting all her life, and she came to me to lose weight. But we really had to get over that fear that she had associated with fat. And it's been a great story. She's lost weight. Her digestion's improved. She's been on antidepressants for many years, but she's managing that so much better, and also just has a whole new outlook on life, which is fantastic. And I think fats is really a key part of that. They are essential, so we can only obtain them, the fats that our cells need, both saturated and unsaturated fats, all the different forms, through our diet. That is in the food that we eat. We can't produce it, so it is essential. And we're familiar with the different fats: avocado, coconut, olives, eggs, cheese, butter. Oily fish is amazing, like sardines and mackerel and herring. Chloe would take a tin of sardines off to school with her, which was fantastic. Bacon, animal fats are so important for growing kids. Our brains are 60 to 70% of fat. Saturated fat is critical for the formation of our cell membranes. It gives our cell membranes structure and allows the absorption of those fat-soluble minerals like A, D, E, and K. And for women, it's especially important for women because it helps us make the hormone estrogen. So for kids going into teenage years, when their hormones are going crazy, really be conscious of the amount of good fats that they're getting in their diet. The other one, the important macronutrient that is good to include in in each meal, and especially lunchboxes, because it's going to help kids focus, concentrate, and be able to have fun with their mates and enjoy school a whole lot more. Protein. It's one of our building blocks of our cells, and found with most of us know the sources and the good areas to find that. Animal meats, including preferably organic, eggs, legumes, dairy, nuts, and even leafy greens contain protein. And it's just so important for the growth and maintenance of the body. So growing kids, protein, fats, really important. It's found in every cell. It's a major structural component of our cells, and especially muscle. It fills them up, gives them great energy. It's key. It's also a good idea when we're eating protein to include vegetables with it, because the enzymes offered by the vegetable assist the digestion of the protein. And some kids aren't into veggies. That's okay. There's plenty of ways of trying to sneak them in. But if they are under the age of 5, I don't worry too much, because kids' digestive enzymes develop at different rates, and some kids under the age of 5 actually don't have the enzymes developed enough to break down some of those vegetables. So, but we'll talk a little bit more about that down the track too. So the last one, which we're all very familiar with, is carbohydrate. And carbs are found in food. We're very familiar where this comes from, but we may not be so familiar that vegetables are a form of complex carbohydrate and whole grains. So they're a great source of carbohydrate. And then there's simple carbohydrates like the breads in the top right-hand corner there, sugars, pasta, jams, and fruit, also the simple carbohydrates. But generally in today's world, and based on our very misguided food pyramid, with the grains right at the base of the pyramid and then the fats right up the top in a little triangle, we can very easily eat too much carbohydrate, and especially simple carbohydrate. So in surplus amounts, this converts to sugar, plays havoc with our energy levels, places stress on our bodies, and disrupts our kids' overall well-being. So while we're eating such a large amount of carbs, you think cereal for breakfast, toast for breakfast, sandwich or a roll for lunch, pasta, rice in the evening. We're eating a lot of carbohydrate, but at the same time, we're not eating enough protein and good fats, especially in our kids. So through this, but if there's one thing you take on board today, be fair and include all 3 macronutrients together. We really don't want to leave anyone out. So there's an example of a great lunchbox. I love this stainless steel lunchbox. And the handouts, I'll actually list some supplies where you might be able to find some of these things if you're interested. But the magic with a lot of the recipes that I'm giving you and sharing is their versatility. These recipes are not just for lunchboxes. They can be used for dinner, lunch, breakfast, or even a snack. It's just a matter of thinking a little bit more broadly away from the humble, tried and tested sandwich. But really, the focus is to save us time and energy, and also to do more of what we really want to do, and which may not be packing lunchboxes, spending time packing lunchboxes in the morning. So when you're cooking, I've given you a recipe for marinated drumsticks. So the drumstick, there's a great source of protein there. Nuts and seeds, probably not nuts if you're in a nut-free school, but the seeds certainly another great source of protein, along with the legumes and the chickpeas. A little bit of fruit, lots of veggies. There's lots of colour. It's a great. So it's got variety, and this is really important that kids try and enjoy many different nutrients from different sources as possible. So if you're feeding the same thing over and over, it really limits their potential to be fully nourished and energized. So keep thinking laterally. Cook double when you are cooking, and then you've got some for leftovers for lunch boxes, or to pop in the freezer for another time, and to save you time. The ideal lunchbox, really one that's easy to open, that the kids can get into. Stainless steel is great if you can find a good one, but just something with the compartments. They do love to be able to see the food and the different colour and things. And then, obviously an ice brick and an insulated bag, especially in this warmer weather. There's no need for fancy, especially made meals for the lunchbox. Really think reinvented leftovers. I love using leftovers. They're quicker than making a sandwich, and they're just so much more nourishing for the kids. What to put in the lunchbox? I'm just going to list through a few of the ones that I've got. So there's another great example of a lunchbox. Lots of colour, the protein with the chicken, and some of the. So you can see that there's like a salami there, and there's a great brand here in WA, and I'm sorry if I can't share in other areas, but they preservative free. There's no nasties in it. It's all made locally here in the Swan Valley. So if you can find sources like that, and that's worth considering as well. So really, I'd like you to think today a little bit beyond the sandwich, and start kind of adding a few more these kind of more meals into your kids' lunchbox if they're up for it. So I'm going to talk about strategies to do that as well. So let's have a quick look. The sustenance, like protein and good fats. So things like fish cakes, and we also use baked beans. Rice paper rolls are great. I've got a recipe for you for a frittata that you can package up into like a muffin style. Nori wraps are fantastic. You can put some egg in there and fermented foods, or you can pretty much put anything into a nori and wrap it up. Chili con carne, if you have any leftover, as an example. Cold meats, leftover roast. I've given you a recipe for some great meatballs, leftover sausages even, and also a great recipe for fish cakes, which my kids devoured, with some capers and lemon juice, some great alkalizing foods in there as well. Ham and cheese roll-up, so some ham without the nitrates. From a happy pig that's grown up, well looked after and pasture-fed, and preferably with cheese wrapped up in it as a roll-up. So great. I've given you a recipe for sang choy bao, which some of you may already have, but that's great. and the kids may not actually eat it as the wrap with the lettuce leaf in their lunchbox, but if you give them a fork or a spoon, then they can. That's a great sustaining lunch. And then also, I've always got in hand some boiled eggs, some wild Alaskan salmon mixed up with some mayonnaise, maybe some avocado, celery, whatever the kids enjoy, into a bit of a salad, and that's a really nice option too. Sandwich or wrap fillings, leftover bolognese sauce, vegetables, so roasted vegetables. If your kids like pumpkin or sweet potato, to spread those in to make a spread almost of the roasted vegetables is really good. And again, cold meats. Soup for the warmer weather is also fantastic. And salads. I've given you some recipes for a quinoa salad and a cabbage salad, which my guys love taking off to school, just in a little thermos container. And again, just add into it. You might add some cold meat. You might add the favourite veggies. But just you can use those grains and that vegetable as a base for the salad. And again, those things can be chopped up and cooked the night before so that they're ready to go and just to pop into the lunchbox. So yeah, leftover dinner, homemade healthy wraps. I've given you the recipe, which I put in my newsletter recently, for that as well. They're such a great thing for the kids and quite easy to do. So then we get to the savoury part, and there's another great example of a lunchbox, with the wrap in there, vegetables, lots of colour again. So if we go to the snack, and I've given you lots of recipes for these as well, but you notice the focus, I've kind of very much moved away from the simple carbohydrate and adding in those good fats still, and sustaining protein for that good energy. So there's a list of things there. The chia pudding, I actually haven't given you a recipe for that because, I don't know, my guys it's not a favourite, but you could try it. Add some cacao, some yogurt, some sweetness, some veggies, not veggies, but some fruit. That's all good. Homemade popcorn's another great one. Add in some coconut oil and cinnamon to help with the maintaining blood sugars, coconut oil, good fats. And we'll just quickly flip through to the sweetness. I'm sorry, I'm rushing through this because I do want to leave some good time for questions and answers. So the sweetness, a chocolate mousse. I've given you a great chocolate mousse recipe. It uses kudzu as a base, a Japanese root, very alkalizing for the tummy, and it helps thicken. So it's like a thickener. Add some banana in there. And the kids, will last a couple of days in the fridge, and the kids absolutely love it. Power balls, some recipe for some nut-free power balls. The coconut and banana cake is one I've actually shared before, so you may already have the recipe for that. I've also given you a recipe for a muesli bar, so some good staples that we kind of often lean on and grab as a packet that we can have on hand, ready to go. A chocolate crackles recipe, which is fantastic for birthdays, but also in the lunchbox for cooler days. And also that the wrap recipe I've given you can be converted into more of a sweeter alternative by adding in some vanilla and a bit of a sweetener, and popping that in their lunchbox as well. And I've also got a great muffin recipe for you, and also some homemade jelly using a gelatin base for the setting agent. And gelatin is just a wonderful food for kids. Great for their joints. It's mineral dense. It really is a wonderful food for us and for kids. And so that jelly is a great recipe to try. So actually, Closie's gone off to school today with that jelly in her lunchbox, which she was pretty excited about. So let's just start, as I said, just incorporating one thing into the lunchbox. Maybe upgrading choices, for example, swapping sugar for some alternative sweeteners, putting less sweetener in, whatever it is, to up their energy levels and add in those good nutrients that really supports their immunity and their well-being. So tips for when we get stuck and it's all a little bit hard. we can start by adding in these new foods, really one by one, step by step, as I mentioned. Try not to say no. It can be hard to the food that you have been doing, but again, upgrading the choices, getting the kids buy-in and their input can help. And also, getting them involved. So just having great choices around, but inviting them as to what they want to put in, giving them a bit of that control. Buddying up with other mums and sharing lunch ideas so that the kids' buddies actually have the same choices. I think this is great if you can get it to work because there's so much around peer groups within the school. So, if you can get your kids sharing the same kind of food, then I think it's just going to accelerate the whole process and make it so much easier for us. And also, growing a veggie or a herb garden is a great thing to be doing as well. Also, role modelling. Role modelling is really important. Think about what and how you as a mum eat, or the father eats, and what are you eating, and what could your kids be role modelling in terms of what they will and won't eat? Are we setting that great example for them to follow? And it is difficult, but I would just highly recommend. We've got this short opportunity to control what our kids are eating, and just keep persisting, trying different ideas. If you want to, you can just send me a message or a text if you get stuck or something's tricky, or you want to bounce some ideas, then please do. And what if their lunch box comes home full? Try not to stress about this. It's okay. If they've enjoyed a good, wholesome, nourishing breakfast, that's going to get them through until home time. They will be hungry, but make sure then afternoon tea is almost like a bit of like dinner. So they're eating, when they're hungry, they're eating something nourishing and they're more likely to eat it. And they're refueling their body with that good stuff. I quite often will have dinner for afternoon tea when the kids get home. And then dinner becomes almost like afternoon tea, a lighter snack, whether it's, some yogurt and fruit, or a piece of fruit, or, that afternoon tea, maybe a smoothie, something like that. And have a smoothie around. Smoothies are great because you can add in all those good nourishing foods that they may not necessarily eat otherwise. And if they, if it's still hard, and presentation's great, that always helps. But otherwise, maybe a good night's sleep will help. Try again tomorrow when they're well rested, and they might even embrace your newly found enthusiasm. But really, lastly and importantly, food is secondary. Moderation and variety in the food we eat is key, but there's so much more to living a healthy life than actual consumption of food, even if it is healthy. Our kids are smart, they're creative and hungry to learn, so guide them to understand and explore the fundamental link with food and nature, the seasons, preparation of a veggie garden, and the similarity to preparing our own internal gardens. A healthy garden directly affects how healthily a plant grows. It's the same for us. Tend a healthy soil, our digestion and our minds, and, watch us thrive, especially our kids. So things to watch out for with your kids, again, their mood, how they're sleeping, their skin, their energy levels, just to give you an indication of for balance within the body. So I've shared a lot of info. So, just take one thing on at a time, and really perhaps think about what you can do today or tomorrow to add more of these great nutrients into your kids' day. And if it's not your lunchbox, maybe it's afternoon tea, or maybe it's breakfast. But just one thing that works well for you and instinctively will work within your family structure. So there's just a quick photo of a friend of ours and an afternoon tea that we had. I mean, the kids just devoured this. We had the egg and bacon pies, which you've got a recipe for. The kale chips, you've also got a recipe for. Then we had a dip with some pesto and some veggies, and it's just fun, and they loved having it all together. And don't you find how kids eat so much better when they've got their buddies around? And then just that. So if you don't recognize an ingredient, neither will the cells of your body. So just eat real food. Just go to Yols, because Yols is a client, and Yols with her daughter Neve. I'm just going to take you off mute, Yols. Can you hear me, Yols?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yours, would you mind just sharing quickly your experience you had with Neve in terms of what you saw? Because I know you were concerned for her health, and just what you saw uh, in terms of some of the changes that you made.
Um, yes, thank you, KP. Yeah, just very quickly, Neve, I guess she was around about 7 or 8 years old, very healthy, happy little girl, full of lots of energy, and in a short space of time, she started going down very quickly, couldn't eat breakfast, talked about a symptom where she felt like she was going to be sick all the time, and in the morning when she was trying to eat a breakfast, had to go and lie down on the couch. So I took her off to the GP, was prescribed antibiotics, and that made her worse. Was then sent to a gastroenterologist, no, sent off for an endoscopy, which showed nothing, and that specialist indicated it could be a gastroenterologist problem. And there was an 18-month waiting list to see the only paediatric gastroenterologist in Perth. But in the meantime, we caught up with KP, who has been a friend of ours for a long time, and this was around about the time that KP had just completed her integrative nutrition course. And KP very quietly said, oh, I might have a few ideas on what could be the matter with Neve. So since we weren't having a lot of joy with the conventional path of seeing GPs and doctors, I thought that there would be no harm in taking up KP and finding out what her ideas were. And and unbeknownst to me, I thought that we had a very healthy diet and was a little bit embarrassed when KP started delving into what we had for breakfast and lunch, which is probably what 95% of the population have for breakfast and lunch. But we made some significant changes very quickly, which the kids found difficult in the beginning, but we stuck to it. Like we got rid of packaged cereals, we got rid of milk, and lunch we got rid of ordinary bread, and we got rid of Vegemite, and we got rid of all the
Pro-
packaged type of
yeah,
food.
processed food.
Yeah, and within less than a couple of months, Neve, all the symptoms had gone. So KP thought that it was probably a reflux condition, and probably a bit lactose intolerant and a very acidic diet. And Neve was better in no time at all. And fortunately, we have been able to stuck to the changes that KP has given us, and I still love getting KP's newsletters and recipes,
Yeah,
and yeah.
yeah, great, Yols. Thanks so much for sharing that, Yols. And I think I guess the thing you were quite concerned, you're quite concerned for needs, so you were quite did things a little more dramatically, I guess, than some people would need to, because you're concerned for her energy and the symptoms that she was experiencing.
Yeah, for sure. That was because, yeah, she was going downhill rapidly, which really concerned me. But it's also because of the way that I am, that
Yeah,
I don't know. I suppose if I'm into something, I throw myself into it. Plus, I am very interested in food as well. I've always loved cooking, and I suppose it was a bit of a natural thing that I found that I was really learning so much about food
yeah,
that I didn't know, and still learning. I'd love to have KP's knowledge,
yeah.
but still learning about food, and it is just quite amazing. I still find it amazing and phenomenal that we don't most of us don't know about food, and it's a fundamental ingredient
Oh,
for life, I guess.
that is such a good point, Yoz. Well, I guess the thing is we've lost connection with that knowledge. With the introduction of convenience foods and the fast pace of our lifestyles, and I guess that's one thing I'm definitely about is kind of bringing that connection back into the kitchen and into the family home with food and where it comes from and the importance of it. And you've seen great results, and you have been very committed, and it's been great working with you as well. So, but thanks so much for sharing that, Yols. Really appreciate it. So thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with packing those lunch boxes